students, Mr. Young here with Chapter 26, Lesson 4, Part 2. In Part 1 of the lesson, we talked a lot about the challenges of the post-Cold War world. Terrorism was a major concern. We also talked about the different presidents of the United States, kind of a little bit what they did in the past few decades, and how Europe struggles to find its way in this post-imperial world. Today we move on to a more positive tone and ask, how is the world working together in the 21st century? Let's check it out. So, when we're talking about the global community, the name of the game for today's lesson is the word interdependent. What does it mean? It means that we have a whole world of countries that rely on each other for goods, information, and resources. In the event of war or some type of catastrophe, the effects are not just felt by the country of the event, but often the whole world. The first example of this to come to mind is the Middle East. We learned about the Middle East very recently, and it is a hotbed of conflict. The U.S. has spent countless dollars and thousands of lives in that region. And why? There is a voice in American politics that says, let's just pull out of the Middle East and let the Middle East handle the Middle East and let that sucker burn, something like that. And it kind of sounds tempting. It's a lot of problems there. Why are we involved? But because we are all interdependent, that would probably come around and kick us in the butt later. For example, what would happen to the price of oil, which we rely on from the Middle East? It is this interdependence that gets us into areas of the world where it would appear that it would be best to stay out of. It's what you might call the butterfly effect. A little comic here. So like a butterfly flaps its wings 200 years ago, and its effects are far-reaching. It's sort of a ripple effect. Like you throw a rock in the pond, it has ripples. The effects spread out and become larger over time. So, a major contributing factor to interdependence is technology. For example, no one was ordering anime from Japan and with messenger pigeons before telephones and whatnot, and the interwebs. The microchip, on the topic of computers, was developed starting all the way back in the 40s, and it's pretty much been improving ever since. In 1976, Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs built a first personal computer. Bill Gates was writing programming in the 80s, and, well, we're still using Microsoft. With personal computers being fairly common in the 90s, the internet really took off. Back in my day, we had to dial up. We had dial-up internet. It was slow as a slug crossing the beach, and it went like this. If you listen to this YouTube video, it makes this awful sound. It sounds like a phone dialing, and there's screeching involved. And then, if someone called your house, because it worked through your phone line, and you were on the internet, it kicked you off the internet. And monsters chased us to school each day, and we had to run 10 miles up a hill both ways. Rabble, rabble. I'm just being an old curmudgeon. Get off my lawn. I tease, but as the world became a smaller place, as it became interdependent, organizations were actually created to help facilitate the smooth flow of these new world economics. The World Bank and International Monetary Fund make it easier for companies to invest in international business. There are trade agreements to make trade cheap and easy, like NAFTA, which is the North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement, and the European Union. We talked about those earlier. The World Trade Organization, the WTO, exists to settle trade disputes between nations and help make new agreements. The downside of all these international trade agreements is that if one country has a poor economy, like say the U.S. in 2008 when the housing bubble burst, it can have negative impacts on, well, throughout the world, really. Many countries that are tied together economically. Now, in terms of global challenges, the number of issues, there are a number of issues that plague mankind. The rich-poor divide in the world draws a very stark contrast. For example, you have long industrialized nations like the United States and most of Western Europe. They have high standards of living and the best technology. Newly industrialized nations, sort of like your developing nations like Brazil and Thailand, are growing economic powers but also tend to be big polluters. On the low end, you have the poor developing countries. Think of places like Vietnam and really most of Africa. These nations still depend primarily on agriculture. They're still very agricultural places. They don't have a lot of industry. These nations are very poor, tend to be very poor, and depend a great deal on basically aid from the rest of the world. Like the rest of the world has to help them with food and stuff like that. The question is, how much of an impact should we have on those nations? For example, you might say, well, if they need to become industrialized, let's open them up to investors. But then all of a sudden you have the country run by, foreign interests instead of by that country's elected government. There's a balance that must be struck. Nuclear weapons are always a hot topic and an issue for the world, as they are capable of destroying the world. During the Cold War, everyone thought that either the U.S. or Russia would blow us all Timbuktu. Now the Cold War is over, and the major nuclear concern is not allowing belligerent nations to acquire nuclear weapons. Think of places like North Korea and Iran. Like the Iran deal was a big topic in politics during the election and before. That was all about not letting Iran get nuclear weapons. Now, the environment. For the most part, when you talk about the environment and the discussion of the global community, you have the developed nations of the world arguing about what are acceptable levels of carbon dioxide output per nation. Each nation has to strike a balance between industrial output and pollution. It's like, you want to have a thriving economy, but you don't want to pollute too much, so generally you have your green people saying that you're creating too much pollution and you need to tone back industry, but then you have the industry people saying, well, we need to create more jobs and more products. So there's a balance that has to be struck there. Not all countries are in agreement on what are considered acceptable levels of pollution, and this can cause diplomatic tension, but no wars are going to be fought over it. I doubt there'll be a green war. Our last issue, global healthcare. When you talk global healthcare, this is mostly concerning things like international pandemics or widespread disease that affects many people. Think of a pandemic kind of like an epidemic, a pandemic. Things like swine flu, H1N1, the bird flu, the Spanish bird flu, Ebola not that long ago. What type of healthcare a nation has can impact the whole world. For example, when there's an outbreak of disease in the third world, it behooves the international community to step in and nip that problem in the bud before it spreads to other countries and then their country. That is why, say, when Ebola broke out in Africa around 2015, it was really the 14 to 16 time span, the world stepped in. Why you say, it'd be easy to say, well, that's Africa's problem, that's not going to be our problem. But that Ebola spread, and sure, it did spread. It wasn't awful, but it was on the news and it was a big problem. But the world as a whole stepped up to fix that problem, help fix that problem for Africa, because what was a problem for Africa very soon would have been a problem for everyone. So there you have it. We all live on this little blue ball of water and dirt, kids, so we have to be good to each other because, well, life is a team sport. That's your mystery on tip of the day. On the next page, we have, that's not the next page. I'm currently map testing. On the next page, we have our quiz. It's a short one because it's only a half lesson today, so 5 points as it has been the last couple days. 2 multiple choice, 1 true false. I think you can get it the first time. But you get 2 attempts anyways in case you need it. Maybe you get that true-false question wrong. And that's it for today. I think this was the last lesson of the chapter, so we'll have a study day and then a test day and see where we go from there. All right, Mr. Young signing out. Have a great day. Let me know if you need anything.